our organizational behavior analysis has a significant, not only the analysis is going to be important, and we're going to cover this in a minute, is also that this, the way that we grade this, the written communication, the clarity of the message is going to be very important during the rubrics of this assignment. So I want to emphasize in this. If we go quickly, it says that organizational behavior analysis. Let me bring the arrow. Okay. Organizational behavior analysis is the deadline is going to be week 8. And if we are in week 5, so it's not going to be that far from now. In groups of, forget about 3. I just put 3 because sometimes depending, there's a lot of cancellations, and we don't know. Probably we can have originally 20 people in the class. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less, etc., etc. Students will work together to prepare a written paper on the organizational behavior analysis of a Canadian company of their choice. Good, perfect, leave it there. So let's move on. So what is this organizational behavior analysis? This is team assignment, very important, and is telling us basic information. The first part was delivered on week 2. That's true. We deliver some basic information about your group, about your team. I'm bringing my got it. I was looking for the syllabus. So in week 2, we deliver the team charter. That was the first part of this presentation. And then we have, in week 8, we have to submit the work. So basically, it's telling us that working in teams of 4 students, you develop a comprehensive organizational behavior analysis for a Canadian company of their choice. With the help of the concepts learned in this course, the students will critically analyze an organizational behavior system, subsystem, utilizing secondary data research, go on the internet, try to find any document that indicated something about the company that you are looking for. So let's say that we ended up choosing Shopify, just to mention one of the many companies in our in Canada, because as I mentioned, has to be a Canadian company. So we need to remember to not only describe what the organization is doing, so we're going to tell what is Shopify about, what is their business model in each of these areas, but also to analyze how well they are doing in each area, which includes looking at how the competition. Good analysis considers both the good and the bad when looking at an organization. But then, because the topic could be so long, so large, we are talking about organizational behavior, and that's, again, is big. So here we have a list of recent research topics in that organizational behavior. So you can choose one on a specific area. So ended up saying like, well, we're going to talk about Shopify, and we're going to talk about organizational change. Boom. So this is the way that we want to talk about Shopify. Why? I'm guessing because they found that after pandemia, many people start buying way more online, and they saw that things were changing so fast before, during, and after pandemia. So that situation changed the business model that they have? Absolutely. So the analysis that you are going to do in regards to organizational behavior is around organizational change. So it's up to you if you want to choose any of the many possibilities in terms of the different angles that you want to talk about. For example, something that is similar. Look at this one. Here we have management of creativity and innovation. Absolutely, because in order to Shopify to understand a little bit of their business, they need to reinvent their organization. They need to create, understand the needs of the customers. So basically, you're going to make whatever decision you want in terms of what is going to be the angle. From there, the topics to be covered on heading of the project report should include, here we have all the elements, and pretty much here we are telling you that, guys, communication, the way that we write the document is critical. So again, I want us to understand that this notion of written documents that are clear is very important for our academic performance. So that's the first thing. And before jumping into two definitions, so let's go back and remember quickly, when we think about organizational behavior, it's pretty much the way that the human behavior deals with an organizational setting. So in other words, pretty much every single class, what we have been learning is about human behavior, where? In companies, period. So we are trying to see all these angles. For example, vision, what is the mission of the organization? If there are any values, if there's any way that the process of HRMT, human resources management, and the benefit of doing this organizational behavior is, imagine the difference between a company with motivated, engaged employees with clear goals aligned with the business strategy, and one with unhappy employees, problems everywhere, really bad leadership, and the lack of direction. So that's pretty much, it's not rocket science, are concepts that we are familiar at this point in time. So before, let's do a quick exercise, and let's try us to see quickly on that company, Shopify, and that literally, even I didn't have that company open. That comes to my mind out of the blues. So let's do a quick exercise. Let's say that we decided to talk about Shopify in terms of boom. Okay, start a business, blah 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 blah. Let's go here. Start a business, grow your business, Shopify. So here we are, and let's do a quick analysis of this information. So here we have Shopify. I'm going to make it bigger. And Shopify, start, sell, market, manage. Not sure. So I'm guessing. So if we are doing this, so we found that, oh, this is a platform about e-commerce. Okay. So they are providing me e-commerce solutions. Cool. So if I scroll down, because I don't think, I start looking for key elements. Look at what they are looking. They are looking for diverse customers. They are not, they are looking for different, someone that clearly is not a teenager, is a mature individual. And well, so we don't have enough information. So if I were doing an exercise, I would like to go with here at the bottom. That's my decision. I would like to go with investors. Let's see what we can find here about Shopify. Cool. Okay. Shopify, making commerce better for everyone. This is the document. When you have money, they want your money. They want you to invest. They want you to buy stocks. That's why they are telling us, look, this is what we are looking. Our mission, beautiful. So they are telling us, what is the mission of the business? Bingo. So we start, probably this is something that we want to. Then they start telling us that they have, give me 1 second. Let me see. Okay, so they are telling us that there are some documents, how they manage COVID. Okay. Oh, here we have an investor overview. I think we need to open this. Actually, okay, I think we're gonna go back here. What else we can see? They are telling us a little bit about the mission, the vast ecosystem, that advancement and stock information, very important. What is happening with the stock and stock information. No, I want to go back to here. Download PDF. Boom. So here we have a document that clearly indicates something about this organization. So let's open the first page. Safe harbor. Let's see what it's telling us. Sorry. Oh. Well, this is, give me 1 second. They are telling us a lot of information about the company. I think this is great. They are telling us building essential internet infrastructure for commerce. Good. Look, one platform, every channel, any device. Do you guys remember the exercise with Starbucks, that they ended up saying something like one coffee, one customer, and one neighborhood at a time? I find some key elements or similar elements in here. I'm not saying that they copy, just simply we are getting into information. They are telling us who they are. They are telling us information about how we can address all these needs for businesses. Here, they are giving us information about the market. Who is the niche, the market niche? Very young people, very stylish. They represent probably the customers they are looking for. They start giving us information about their market, different, depending on your business, they are giving different solutions. So if you can see, guys, this is a way that you can understand a lot of things of this organization. And one more time, here we can see who is the target market. It's not about people like me. Probably they are not looking for grown-ups, because grown-ups usually they don't have the ability to create business as young people. So as we can see, most of them are very young because they are talking about merchant profile. So as you can see here, we have a lot of information. We know that not only is about these guys or these small merchants, they are saying we are also able to provide solutions for big guys, and they are showing us that. Okay, I think we have one. Our guest is back. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me say hello to our guest. Anisha, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Okay. Welcome, Anisha. Let me finish just one simple idea.
Yeah, sure.
1 minute. So guys, so basically, going back to Shopify. Oh, where is it? Somewhere. It's Anisha's fault. Anyway, give me 1 second, Anisha. Okay, I think, okay, so basically, look for documents, look for information, and you notice that we found the right document just going into the company's website and try to find investors the investor's manual. So we don't have to go, but look at this. There's so much information. They are comparing what platforms, share, look, competition. So, and we have like lots of information. So we need to keep that in mind. And in the meantime, we're going to concentrate in our guest. So we are back again, Anisha. When you're ready, we are ready.
Sounds good. So I can maybe start with just introductions here for everyone. Hello, my name is Anisha. I'm so excited to be here, by the way. I see that some of you have connected with me on LinkedIn. I saw some of those invites come through. Love that. And just as a note, if, you know, outside of this conversation, if you wanted to connect and have any one-on-one chats, I'm always going to be open to that as well. So Guillermo, I wanted to start then with just like my background and information. Is that kind of where we should go, or is there a starting point that you wanted me to take on?
Good. I would like to have feedback. Is sound okay? Hello?
Yes, Professor.
Guys?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Secondly, I'm gonna be sadly, I was asking for 2 hours to Anisha. Anisha, we want to talk to you for 2 hours, and he was like, "What? I get paid for the minute." And I said, "Okay." So sadly, Anisha can only join us for less time, so we have to maximize that time. So Anisha, if that's okay for you, I tried to summarize. If that's okay for you, if you can tell us something between 3 to 4 minutes per question. So if you can tell us a little bit of your life before Canada, your life when you landed in this country, your personal journey academically and professionally, whatever you want to share with us. And finally, Anisha, if you can share with us what is being a consultant, because I was telling our class that I find very complex for you to just read a summary about an organization, and out of that you need to come with these ideas, assumptions, and you're telling these people how to manage their business. I think that's a big responsibility. So we are listening.
All right, so I'll start with all the fun facts first. I was born in a small town in India. It's called Ranchi in Jharkhand. It's a very, very small town. Very few people know of it. But yeah, lived there about 4 years, and then my parents and I moved to Oman, lived in Oman for 4 years, and then moved back to India, was there in Gujarat for a couple of years. And then we moved to Canada. I think it was back in 96 or something when I came here. And it was an amazing time because I think, you know, being as young as I was, I had the chance to experience like the stark differences between all the cultures that I had a chance to witness. So, you know, I had a chance to live in India, had a chance to live in Oman, and then in Canada. So there was 3 different distinct cultures. But I think also importantly, just got a chance to really see how my father, how he responded to those cultural differences. And I think it's worth mentioning that, you know, being here, coming here as an immigrant was not an easy time. It was not an easy journey, especially back in the day when there weren't a lot of Indians in my hometown. I moved to Vancouver. And, you know, I was visibly very different. And so my experience at school was interesting in that, you know, I got bullied a lot simply because of the way that I looked. Like my skin was different, my hair was different. I spoke like to them what was a weird accent. And they were surprised back then that I even understood English. So there was a lot of, you know, in terms of awareness of the type of education that people like me could receive in India. That awareness piece was not really there back then. I think times have changed now. And so, that was an interesting part of my journey. But the other part that was really, I think, difficult was, I'll say this, that my life in Oman and in India, and I think the access to, let's call it luxuries, and the privilege that we had living there was quite different when we moved to Canada. And from my observation, again, I'm seeing this in the view of like a young child that's still trying to make sense of the world around them. What I observed was my dad, who held like a senior executive position for major corporations across India as well as in Oman, and was treated very, very differently. And then when we moved to Canada, immediate disregard of his education, his experience, and he started as a sales associate. His first job, his salary was $6.75 an hour. And what you do with that type of an income, with a family of 4 and having to feed kids and pay for their education and everything, like, we saw the major difference. And so I think that as a young child in that experience, as difficult as it may have been, I think it set this precedence in me in terms of what type of work ethic is really required to succeed in life. And success can be different for everybody in so many ways. And for me, I got a chance to observe that, right? Like what success meant to my dad when he was in India and in Oman was very, very different to what it was when he moved to Canada. So I got a chance to really witness that, and I feel very fortunate that I did. So that essentially really shaped, I think, my framework of just around grit and hard work. Sorry, Guillermo, was there a question?
No. I would like to go with from where you are. So you just landed to this country. You have all these, and you ask a very important question: what is success, and what is the perception of your success from your father being in Oman or being in India and right now in Canada? But you start shifting into your own personal pursuit.
Yeah.
So would you like to share with us what are the key elements in terms of professionally, academically, and if there's any that you would like to share with us personally? What are those 3 forces that shape who you are today?
I really do think having the right attitude in life in general will take you very, very far. And I think what I learned from being very, very young and seeing my dad being put in all these different situations. So firsthand, I got a chance to observe just his continuous positive attitude, and my mom as well, just their continuous positive attitude towards what life can throw at you and what you can make the most of in those given circumstances. So finding a way, and those pockets of happiness can come in so many different ways and shape and form. So that really instilled that framework of thinking. I think, just as I went through my life, I think there were other distinct periods, Guillermo, that started to really, I guess, frame my definition of success. So early on, a lot of it was around education. A lot of it was around what position you held in your job. And then I think the more I progressed in life, I feel like through my personal experiences, as well as my experience at work, I started to realize that success is very different for so many people, and it can be different for me. And it doesn't have to be defined by where I work, what position I hold, what type of a family framework I have. A lot of it is just my perspective in life and what is really serving myself in a positive way. I'm sorry, I don't know if that directly answered your question.
But I love something that you say, Anisha, because you say what life throw you and what you make out of that, which is something that we hear over and over. If life throw you lemons or limes, make lemonade out of that, which is like pretty smart. What you're telling us, it was not easy, neither for my father, neither for us, but how we can handle that adversity. And you emphasize in your own personal academic goals. Did you mind if you tell us what was your journey in university studying, and what was your first significant job?
Yeah, for sure. So I got accepted at Simon Fraser for in Bachelor of Arts. I completed my Bachelor of Arts there in Interactive Arts and Technology. And I'll say my journey through education completely was it was very, very difficult. I'm not I don't consider myself smart by any means. But what I do know about myself is I'm incredibly hardworking. And I think that took me really, really far. So I would never shy it away from hard work. And I think that ties back to the connection with me experiencing and observing how my dad really responded to really difficult situations. So I graduated from SFU as completing my Bachelor of Arts. My first job was a projects coordinator work at Kodak, and it was a very like junior job. But you know what? I have to admit that in that experience, I got a chance to be paired with somebody who was phenomenal in project management, and I got a chance to observe a large-scale enterprise waterfall style platforms migration initiative. And it was a global initiative. It wasn't something that was just kept within Canada. So part of my role required me to connect with people from all over the world, especially in Europe and Asia, and start to interface with people with different working personalities, and you know how culture really does play a role in the way that we view our work and how we view each other. So very early on, I think, experience over there. And then following.
May I interrupt you? I think it's great what you are telling us, because you indicated that in this learning process, you start talking about SFU, and you ended up bringing a new way of learning that was not academically, was working with, I don't know what is the word that you use, an amazing individual. And you talk about project management at Kodak, where you basically learn by example, but looking at someone. So that's great, because you are not putting learning only in an academic environment, in an university environment. You are saying like, I learned a lot just simply working with the right person and looking. And you mentioned about culture many times. So I think this is great. Thank you, because you are giving us a lot of food for thought.
Yeah, I think that, you know, one thing that I've started to, and maybe my perspective on this becomes more and more matured as I get older. But I do think that when I start to feel very, very comfortable, whether it's a job or whatever, I start to realize that I'm getting overly comfortable, and that basically means that I'm not learning and growing anymore. And that happened to me. So when I started to work at TELUS following that, I spent like 7 years at TELUS, got overly comfortable there, I think, you know, clearly spent 7 years there. And I started to realize just the later part of my TELUS experience is that, you know, I really want to get a bump in my career. And there were several personal, I think, factors around what drove me to that goal. And so I signed myself up for a GDBA program at SFU. It is actually a graduate business diploma program, and you can do it part-time. You can, you know, do it at your own pace. And for me, it was the perfect, I think, tab into the business framework and business studies. Yeah, go ahead, Guillermo.
You mentioned personal factors. Is that okay if you share if that's okay for you? Talk about that personal factor.
Yeah, for sure. So I I ended up getting pregnant and with my ex-husband at the time. And around that time, I realized that, frankly, to live in this country and in this city in Vancouver, AKA, it's very, very expensive to essentially like survive here. And so for the positions that I really wanted to get into, I needed an education to further my thinking and broaden my perspective. And I wasn't getting that anymore at work through experience. For some people, I will say, sometimes you fall into those natural opportunities that open up that perspective for you and you find your groove and you excel in your career through that pace. For me, the journey was quite different. I had to force myself to an environment that activated that learning and growth type mentality and broadened my perspective. And interestingly enough, I actually did my GDBA, the entire program, immediately after giving birth during my maternity leave. I don't recommend it, but it was quite the challenge that I took on, purely with that initial motivation that I need to do more with my career. There's this that felt like a blocker that I wanted to break through, and I felt like going through an education and broadening my perspective, broadening my network would help me get there.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So it sounds like you ended up being having your own family, you and your son. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you, on top of that, you say, I'm going to pursue a new level of education. So then we have a single mom pursuing a new academic challenge. That was before or after TELUS?
That was during TELUS. And I think my last couple of years at TELUS was very, very challenging. I was put in a pretty difficult situation. It was, some parts of it, was very uncomfortable there. So I knew that I wanted to step out of TELUS. When I was doing my GDBA, by the way, at that time, I was still married and had my son, did my GDBA during maternity leave. But near the end of that is when I ended up getting separated. It's at that point I entered the full-on single mother journey. And I realized that, I've already put one foot in the water with respect to progressing in my education. I did my GDBA, completed that successfully. And so why not just take it the full way and complete my MBA? So I did decide to register for an MBA program at SFU. It got accepted. And then I ended up doing my two-year MBA program, that entire journey while being full-time employed, as well as being a single mom, taking care of a toddler at the time. So he was, I think, two years old. And yeah, that was an interesting experience, I'll have to say.
Wow. So you finish your MBA at Simon Fraser. You are in this point that you say, I need a change in my life in terms of career. So that's when you landed in consulting?
So I completed my MBA, and then after that, I wanted a change in my career. So I mentioned that I was working at TELUS for like 7 years. And aside from being bored of just the experience there, I wanted a change. I wanted to get myself in an environment that allowed me space to actively implement all of the studies that I've gone through and all these business strategies and the business studies that I've been doing. I want to actively apply that knowledge in a safe space. And so I actually got hired at a digital agency. It's called Imagex. It's a small digital agency that builds like digital experiences and websites and portfolio sites for a large number of organizations across the States. And I was very selective in this approach because I received a few other offers, and I wanted to change up my strategy, and instead of working for a large organization, go to a really small one so that I can be flexible and wear multiple hats and start to apply all of these skills that I had learned through my MBA studies. And culture was like the organization culture was critical at this point for me. So I lucked out in this regard. I found that ImageX was very comfortable with me just applying my skill set in all these different areas and avenues, but further my skill set within the project management space. Following that is when I got the job opportunity at Deloitte. And interestingly enough, the factor that distinguished my application from others, I think, was because of the diversity of my experience, working with a large organization, understanding that bigger organizational structure, but also having the ability to think in a small firm, being able to wear those multiple hats and understand how to flex different skill sets and needs in a given environment and space.
Anisha, you're getting, or we're getting into that spot that is very important for us, where because sometimes we can see our frustration that when we have a business case, and all what we have in a business case is a 5-10 pages document telling us about the history of the organization, very basic information. And out of that, we need to come to, and you mentioned in your previous comment about strategies. You talk about project management and so on. So it's very difficult for us to see how we can come to a conclusion out of a lot of written data. How that differs from your real experience when one of your clients say, Anisha, give us a hand, we don't understand this. How is that process?
So I think that it obviously varies from client to client, but general approach that I like to take is approach it with an empathetic mindset, which basically means is you need to understand your client really, really well. And part of that requires you to understand the backstory. Do that bit of research that is required. Read up news articles about the organization. Understand the frame, like the outskirt framework of things that are happening, the market conditions that may be influencing your client's perspective and the direction that they want to take. So having that broad understanding is really, really important. But then also second to that, understanding what is their organizational strategy. A lot of that information is sometimes available through just simple online research. But in my engagement with the client, it's the macro, understanding the macro perspective and the micro perspective, right? The macro picture you can get from your Google research, understand those market influences and the industry influences, that industry conditions that are happening. And then those micro conversations that I have more one-on-one with the client, it's trying to understand what are the heavy hitting pieces that is absolutely impacting them. And let's collectively agree, what is the goal of what we want to accomplish? And once you start to understand these other influencing factors, you can then formulate an immediate strategy that is a bit more targeted. I try to remind myself that when I'm getting involved in any client engagement, I'm not there to fix all the problems. What I am there to do is start to prioritize and start to collectively agree what are the key areas that will have the highest level of influence and the highest level of value. And once you determine that, you then work with the partner. You have a pretty robust team to help support with the solutions. One thing that I will say is that coming up with a solution is never the challenge. What is the challenge is identifying the real problem. And that's the part that, having that empathetic approach and doing your research and understanding what those conditions are so that you can make an informed assumption of what that challenge is.
Wow. A lot of information. So I'm going to go with my last question. And guys, we're going to have room for your own questions. Don't forget that we need to maximize our guests. She charged by the minute. So seriously, in real life, no, guys, seriously, in real life, if we were dealing with Anisha, I were like, ask quickly. move on anyway. So Anisha, so you are telling us very okay, there's something that is difficult for me to understand, and this is the situation, Anisha. Let's say that I am, just to make an example, in the car business, and I'm having a problem with talent management, just to make an assumption. So I don't understand how. I know my business, I've been in this business for 20 years, I'm surrounded by a group of smart people. Why do I need an outsider that comes to tell me how to address my problem? It's difficult for me if I have, and you mentioned the word culture, if I am very stubborn. Why do I want this person to come to my business to tell me how to deal the problem? How you can explain that?
So I think that having, first of all, I think we all know that, you know, when we're all into the weeds and when our head is kind of like in the work, it is very difficult sometimes, especially when there's those high pressure points, for us to put up our head and start to look at it from a broader perspective of what the challenges are going on. So there's sometimes that's part of the challenge that can happen. But then secondly, it's always a good idea to get that third party unbiased perspective of the challenges that you're experiencing. So I think in the world of consulting, it's always a fine balance to toy between, because you know you're coming in with that broader perspective, that market research and understanding of how their competitors are functioning in that space, in that industry. So you're bringing that knowledge and experience coming in and saying, by the way, this is the baseline of what is acceptable within your industry. And these are the specific areas where you're lacking. So I think sometimes access to that information isn't so easily available. You can get data points, you can get you know, a lot of it from Google research, but what sometimes is lacking is that perspective. And I think with consulting firms coming in, they bring in that perspective to open your eyes or remove those blinders that you may have.
Wow, lot of information, and I just want to try to summarize what I understand. So you mentioned very important things. You talk about empathy. I want to get into that organization and create that empathy. That's very important. Then you're telling us that the most important thing is to identify the problem and do your online research. That's great, because sometimes we don't see in academia how what we are doing really reflects the world, and with the exception that we don't have the opportunity to create empathy with our business case, we are pretty much trying to, first of all, we are making our best effort to identify the real problem, and secondly, do our online research. So I believe, Anisha, we're pretty much in the right direction. So having said this, guys, it's important, if we are able to listen your questions. Don't forget that Anisha is coming, like many of us, including myself, from somewhere else, and we are in this journey, try to, what you said, what is your definition of success? What is the life that we wanna, or what is what our dreams are? So any questions?
Yeah,
I
I'd
know.
love to hear from all of you. In fact, like it'd be nice to answer any questions you may have.
I see one person. Give me 1 second. I don't know who's raising the hand. SG. Okay, go ahead, Snideep. I'm going to repeat that. Do you wanna take over the mic, Snideep?
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, sorry, I was unable to unmute myself. Hi, Nisha. It was lovely hearing your experience. And at one point of your conversation, you mentioned that you faced some problems and some uncomfortable situations while your work experience in TELUS. So
Yeah.
would you throw a little shade on that?
I think so I have to obviously be very careful how I say this. So I think it's important to mention that, you know, when you catch yourself in an environment at work that feels uncomfortable to you, it's important to consider that you might just not be in the right place. Like, it's not necessarily the organization itself. And I think that was a situation with me because I was really looking to progress in my career and I was just not getting what I was looking for. I was wanting to start to apply my MBA experience and start to bring in those the concepts, business concepts that I'm learning. I wanted to be in that space that I can actively apply that knowledge and understanding. And I just could not find those right opportunities to do that in the position that I was in. And so, you know, I'll admit that like it causes a bit of frustration, right? Like when you're wanting to like run, but then you're only forced to walk, I think that creates a point of frustration. So I think I experienced a bit of that in my individual experience. And so the way that I ended up changing that was starting to I started to work for a really small firm where I had that flexibility and that space to be able to really apply those concepts and that knowledge that I've been learning.
Okay, so just to be clear, so just to summarize your point of view, you wanted to make a big difference in a small firm rather than making a small difference in a big firm?
Yes and no. I really wanted to start to apply the business concepts that I was learning in my business school at a very tactical level. And sometimes in a large organization, there's like a role and responsibility that you're given and you're supposed to play. And so sometimes it's very challenging to step out of that role that you've been given to play to start to experiment with all these different concepts and ideas that you've learned. And so when I started with ImageX, which was again a small digital agency here in Vancouver, I worked right next to the CEO. I worked right next to the COO and the marketing executives to come up with like exciting strategies of how to grow the business, how to and I was also involved with the overall cost management and identifying opportunities for business. So I think it's starting to apply those concepts was exactly what I wanted to do, and I got the chance to do that there.
Okay. So when you decided to take up a GD, sorry. Okay.
No, you know why? It's because we have 4 more people. But okay, yeah. Go ahead. Move on with your last question.
Okay. So when you chose to apply for GDBA, what was your mindset that made you feel that you need to grow as a person and learn more? And wasn't it a risky decision, like juggling through your job, studies, and
it was
I'm sure GDBA in SFU was not of budgetized costs, I can say that.
Yeah, no, it was a huge decision. I was starting to feel like if I wanted to progress in my career, I need to broaden my perspective. And I mentioned that my background was in interactive arts and technology, and through the job roles that I was playing, I was kind of naturally falling into this project management space and just team management and leadership type roles. And the context of what was expected of me started to shift and change. And I started to feel that maybe I'm not the expert in this space anymore. And so I need to seek out that education that helps me feel like I've had that base level understanding. So that definitely happened through my work experience. But then the other thing too, and I guess is part of like a womanly journey, but I'll share it. But once I became pregnant, I felt like this enormous amount of responsibility that it's not just me that I have to take care of. I have to take care of this child that's coming into this life. And I want to make sure that, and that was like a single motivation for me. Not saying that it should be for everyone, but for me, that became like a real driver that I want to be able to do more, to give more, and maybe this might be the right path.
Thank you.
Let's go with Rafu. Hey, Rafu, hi.
Hi, Professor.
Did you mind if you, for our guest, if that's okay, would you like to turn your camera on if that's an option for you?
It's okay by me. I'll do that.
Thank you, Rafi.
I just do that. Hi, Anisha.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your experience, and I like your growth mindset. I like
Thank
very
you.
well. My question to you today is, you said your dad moved from India to Oman, and when he decided to move to Canada, he has to start at the entry level, regardless of his qualification. I want to believe that he's got a lot of qualifications before moving to Canada. But why did you have to start at the entry level? I believe this is just a general thing in Canada, whereby regardless of what your educational background is, you have to start at the very entry level. Does that affect your growth mindset? That's my question.
So I'll repeat your question just to make sure I understand. Your question is if it affected my mindset based off of like just observing my dad's experience having to start at the entry level. Did that? Yes, it did. And I think it impacted in multiple levels, right? So like we're always, by the way, like we're all humans, right? We're always learning and growing, and our perspective is always getting molded and shaped as we get older and older. So when I was really, really young, in that moment, when I got a chance to observe that, I was very angry. I didn't like it. I hated it. But what I realized is coming out of that experience and just kind of looking back, reflecting back, and seeing how my dad evolved as you know, in his journey over here, the work ethic that he instilled in me is something that has taken me far to date. And I know it's the one area that I feel the most confident in. And so I am thankful now for that experience. I'm thankful for that perspective. So, you know, if you would have asked me the same question if I was like a little child, I would probably be very angry. But I think speaking about it as an adult and the positive impact that it's actually had on my life, I can only speak positively because it's resulted in great things. But I think it's an important topic, right? Like we see just from my observation with how immigrants and the opportunities that they have as of today's date, how incredibly different it was, you know, only a few years ago. So I think it's nice to see that we've made progress on that end, especially in Canada. And that's the part that I feel proud of.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's continue with Sonali. Go ahead, Sonali.
Hi, Anisha.
Hi.
Thanks for joining
Sonali,
us. And
if that's an option, Sonali, if that's okay, you can turn even better. Thank you.
yeah, so basically, first of all, thanks for joining us. And secondly, I was really happy to hear that you're from Ranchi because I'm from there too.
No.
So, yes.
That's so exciting. Well, we might need to connect.
Yeah,
after.
exactly. Yeah, sure, exactly. And so I would like to ask, like you deal with a lot of companies on a regular basis. So how, as a consultant, you adjust to companies' culture?
So my job isn't necessarily to adjust to their culture. My job is to understand their culture, right? And after understanding their culture, I'm actually a very tactical person. So I become very focused on, well, what is expected of me over here? So understanding your role coming into that project, coming into that engagement is really, really critical. And so that's the way that I view it. It like the company culture very rarely impacts the way that, you know, how I'm behaving or interacting, but it does inform the strategy or the direction or the conversations that need to take place with the client. And then the other part of this too, it also informs, like, for example, if I'm sensing that the client is at a highly emotional state, having an understanding of the organization culture and the pressure points that they're experiencing, it's that additional level of information that is helpful in that interaction that I'm having with them.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining.
Let's go with Maria Susana. Go ahead, Maria Susana.
Hi, thank you. This is kind of similar to the question from Sonali. So in many assignments, we have seen how diversity affects the environment.
Mhm.
So my question is, how in your experience as a consultant, the diversity has affected the company? And if it has, because I'm sure that it has had many negative impacts, but also positive impacts, how can we manage with the negative impacts about diversity?
So diversity is such an interesting topic to me, and to be honest, like one that I feel very, very passionate about. It's hard for me to not roll my eyes whenever I see organizations post statistics on the number of women that they've hired or the number of colored people that they have on their team, because truly, in terms of diversity, that doesn't mean anything. If like for me, what I'm usually observing from a diversity point of view is, what is the organization's culture? What type of space are they creating for those diverse thoughts to be brought to the table? How are we leveraging the opportunities that we've now created by hiring the right people at the table? Do they feel represented? Do they feel like they have a voice at the table? Or are they expected to follow traditional, like, your white men thinking, right? So I think it's a really important factor that I can probably speak on and on about. But Maria, I think the question that you're asking is maybe not a little clear to me. Are you asking that, how does diversity influence in the conversations that I'm having with the client, or how that factors in?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is a really broad topic, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to specify the question. But regarding your experience, have you had any issues that, well, not you, the companies, have had any issues with diversity, and how did they manage that? I mean, I understand that
Yeah.
diversity is a really important factor. Well, you said that not so important, but for example, in this weekly discussion, well, last weekly discussion, we reviewed that Montreal and Vancouver are different. So how can we apply that diversity, or how it can impact business?
Mm-hmm. So I think that the way I can't openly talk about like the organization's like challenges or whatnot. I can speak on my individual experience. So from my observation, once you have the right diverse representatives at the table and you create a space for them to feel comfortable to come forward with their thoughts and ideas, that's when you start to truly extract the value of diversity and inclusion, right? So if they are represented equally and well, and they have that proper voice at the table, that's when you start to see the real value. And diversity doesn't always come in a way that's like visible to the eye, right? Like, it's not just about the way that you look or what have you. It's also diversity and experience, right? Like, when you have people that have gone through a life experience that was really, really traumatic, and they came out of that, and they, that shaped their mindset as to the person that they are and the person that they are at work. That's the type of experiences that I think should be valued as well. How it does it impacts in the I guess the work that I do. To be honest, I mentioned this earlier. I'm a very tactical person. I get to, okay, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What do we need to do to get there? And I sometimes, very rarely, am paying too much attention in that diversity and inclusion space. It's making sure that, the way that I apply it is just making sure that whatever team that I'm working with, they all feel comfortable enough to come forward with their ideas and thoughts, and, having that open dialogue and conversation. But on the flip side, also encouraging that on with the clients that I'm working with as well.
Okay, if I don't think we don't have more questions, so I want to summarize a little bit of what we learned from Anisha. So thanks, first of all, for opening. It's like your heart, you share with us, with people that you don't know, who you are, a lot of information about, and all what we have to say is that thank you. This is more than a class. This is more like life experience. And as you indicated, Anisha, you mentioned how you learn from your father. You mentioned in different part of our conversation how this man was a role or is a role model for you. So so it's very interesting, because the beauty of this conversation is that it's not only the academic environment. You mentioned about learning from your father as a role model, about as a hardworking, and as his ethics about work. You talk also about the person that you work with at Kodak, how out of observing you learn a lot. So I think in that sense, we are learning from you, because this is more than a class. This is a life experience, and I think this is great. And just to finalize, I want to emphasize, you talk about culture over and over in different angles. You talk about your personal journey, and also I want to finish with your most. I'm cheating with my notes. So you mentioned something about identify the real problem, and the very last sentence answer to Maria, that was part of your answer. You just bring that. I am a very straightforward. I want to know what is the main thing, what is the bottom line of the problem. So I think that's the main point. Going back to our academic component of this conversation, when we are dealing with business cases, that's the main thing. What is the problem here? What is the essence of this blah, blah, blah? Because we have 7 pages, and those 7 pages doesn't mean nothing if we are not able to understand the essence of that problem. So I just want to say thank you. You are our first guest, and I am so happy. I am excited. I personally learned from you. I hope our classmates also learn something. For me, was a very important life lesson. So Anisha, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all for having me and so patiently listening to all my experience and my stories. But yeah, like I said, if any of you wanted to connect, I'm always open to that. I love conversations like this. And thank you again for having me.
Okay,
Right.
guys. So any last word for Anisha? Nothing? No. Okay. Anisha, talk to you when the time is right. And oh, by the way, Anisha, our university give us some kind of recognition for our guests. So it's going to be a pleasure for do it for the first time with you. So thank you again.
So sweet. You didn't need to do that. I'm not here for that. Like, I love this conversation. This really feeds my soul. So I'm happy to do it anytime. Thanks, everyone.